Daddy's girl, but now that he was gone, what was she? His face floated through her memories, blocking out the scenery flashing past the window. A hint of a smile hid beneath his dark, bushy mustache. With her palm on the cool glass, she bit her lip to keep from crying. The train's loud whistle blasted his ghostly image away. Ellen jumped in her seat. Her flailing elbow jabbed the cameo on top of her mother's chest. "Oh, my goodness, child!" Startled awake, Lenore winced as she clutched her breast. "What has gotten into you?" "I'm sorry, Mama. I wasn't expecting the whistle. Does that mean we're there now?" Lenore took a deep breath, smoothed her white, high-collared shirtwaist, straightened her brooch, and relaxed her hands in her lap. "Not yet, honey. We still have a few more hours to go. Try to get some rest." Patting her upsweet hairdo, she leaned her head back on the gray velvet seat and closed her eyes. Ellen glanced at all the people in the passenger car. Her mother said they couldn't afford a parlor car and warned Ellen of the rough characters they might encounter on the train, seeing how she was only 12 and had lived a fairly sheltered life. She was disappointed that so far she hadn't seen anyone as distasteful as her mother had hinted at, and though the 9-hour train ride seemed to last forever, Ellen was too distraught to sleep and didn't understand how her mother could. Particles of spring light sparkled through the train window and danced on her mother's smooth, resting face. Frank Cook, Ellen's father, used to say Lenore was the prettiest woman in Texas. He also used to say Ellen had Lenore's good looks, her mother's light brown eyes with long brown hair to match. She prayed her body wouldn't grow into her father's stocky build. She wanted heads to turn for her like they did for her mother. Lenore celebrated her 29th birthday 2 months ago, and for her age, she still had a slender, girlish figure. Ellen's own body was being swallowed by a brand new white linen butcher dress. Did the ruffles parading across her shoulder?
Some dress, Rebel.
God likes it.
Did the ruffles parading across her shoulders and the V-shaped waist make her look childish? Straightening her collar and smoothing the wrinkles from her dress, she ran her hand covertly down her newly formed and tender breast. Would they grow any bigger? With a sigh, Ellen thought if only she was older, she could somehow stop the direction of their lives. She turned back to the window to watch the landscape rush past. The flatlands, brown grass, and mesquite bushes looked like it would roll on endlessly like a nightmare she couldn't awaken from until the train rattled across a bridge. It seemed to Ellen the dark, rolling river below was the ending of her old life. She dreaded what awaited them, a new life with a stranger in a strange part of the country. If they hadn't had to leave behind her only friends, Ada and David, she would have felt safer. No one could save them if they needed saving. Ellen missed the Polish housekeeper. Ada's husband, Ludwig, had been dead for years. Ellen played with her youngest son, David. She smiled as she thought of the fun they had. He often larked about at the children's table in the kitchen when Lenore was hosting dinner parties. Once he stuck noodles up his nose and blew them out while Ada was serving the guests in the dining room. Ellen often wished she was David's sister and Ada was her mother. Ada always took care of her. Many of Ellen's childhood memories of Lenore were hazy and vague. It seemed her mother was always attending to more pressing issues, engagements or illnesses. Ellen was never sure. If she were with her friends now, she wouldn't feel so alone. Only the strangers on the train kept Ellen from crying. Outside, the mesquite bushes bloomed into trees, and brown earth grew into a green carpet scattered with a few patches of yellow wildflowers. With a few blinks of her eyes, Ellen watched rugged green hills emerge covered with red, purple, and blue flowers. Some she knew to be Indian paintbrushes and bluebonnets, mixed in with a few of the yellow ones she saw earlier. Her mother said this was called the hill country, and now she could see why. At least she knew one thing for certain. The countryside looked much prettier than her old town of Salt Flat. The train whistle blew again, and the conductor called out, "Next stop, Brady." Her mother stirred, covered her mouth, and yawned. Ellen nudged her arm. "Are we there?" The woman laughed. "Not yet. It'll be a while." "Oh, well, not that I'm in a hurry." Ellen sighed and sank back into her seat. Lenore patted Ellen's shoulder. "Why don't you get some sleep? You don't want to be exhausted when we get there." "I don't see why it matters. I'm not the one who's getting married." "You'd think you were by the way you keep fidgeting. I'm the one who should be nervous." "So why aren't you?" Ellen said. "Oh, I am, believe me. I am, but I want to look my best, and rest is the finest beauty formula around. So I take deep breaths and think pretty thoughts, like buying new dresses and dancing like the queen of the ball. Normally, Ellen would have laughed at her mother's dreamy nonsense, because the woman always acted like she lived in a fairy tale. But now, with the uncertainties in her life, Ellen wasn't sure if she could ever laugh again. Tell me about this Mr. Turner. Lenore giggled like a girl. His first name is Calvin, but you're going to have to learn to call him Daddy. Ellen's face flushed with anger. I don't think I can. She only had one daddy, and he was dead. No stranger could take his place. How could her mother replace him so easily? There was nothing he wouldn't do for them. Everything her mother ever wanted, he had given her. The most extravagant gift he gave Ellen was a beautiful white pony for her 8th birthday. She named the pony Ivory and rode almost every day until some man came and took her away. Mom said Daddy owed the man money. Oh, honey. Her mother reached around Ellen's shoulder as if to hug her, but retracted her arm and took her hand instead. Ellen couldn't remember the last time she held her mother's hand. It was soft, unlike Ada's or her father's. Let's see what another day brings, shall we? Just give it some time, that's all I ask. Now, do you want to know what he looks like? Lenore didn't wait for an answer. Granted, I only met him that one time during our arranged meeting, but my memory serves me well. He's tall, a little too skinny, but I'll fix that. With your cooking? Ellen interrupted. Her mother might be a charmer, but she sure wasn't a cook. Ada prepared all their meals until a month after Daddy died, when her mother could no longer afford to pay her. That had been 4 months ago. Lenore ignored Ellen's comment and continued talking. He's got hair as light as hay and his eyes are sky blue. I think he's handsome. He seems nice, a bit shy maybe. He makes a good living off his farm selling eggs, apples, peaches, and corn. He's going to take good care of us. I thought he wanted you to take care of him. That's what the advertisement said. We'll take care of each other. He'll provide a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. We can't ask for more than that. With nothing left to say, Lenore went back to sleep. Ellen wanted to ask, why not? She shook her head, astonished her mother was going through with this nonsense. Mama said there wasn't anybody in Salt Flat worth marrying, though she hadn't stayed long enough to receive any offers after Daddy died. Why do you even have to get married? She asked her mother a few days ago as they packed a few of their belongings. Everything else was being put up for auction to pay off her father's debt. Ellen was allowed to pack half her wardrobe and a few of her treasured books. Lenore explained in her offhanded way, we'd starve to death. I mean, what could I possibly do? I couldn't take in enough laundry and ironing to feed 2 people. With my parents long dead and your daddy's people, well, we won't talk about them. We don't have anybody to rely on. All Ellen knew of her mother's family was their last name Higgins, and they died from some illness, one after the other. She tried to get her mother to explain why they never saw the cooks, but the subject was closed with the snap of a lock on the suitcase. I'm tired, her mother said. Someday I'll tell you all about them. Now go to bed and stop pestering me with all your questions. Just trust me, for goodness sakes. Ellen had always trusted her father to take care of everything. Whenever her tutor, Miss Helena, couldn't bring her books, he did. They read together often. He helped her with the difficult vocabulary, and they discussed the stories when they finished. He was the one who had taught her how to read. Without him, she wasn't sure what to do. When the train pulled into the Hartridge station, Ellen looked out the window and saw fireflies glowing and flitting about in the growing darkness. She and her mother were the only people getting off the train. As they shuffled down the aisle, she heard snoring and saw many passengers sleeping. It didn't take but a second to find the person snoring, an old man, his brown waistcoat unbuttoned, his plump hands resting on a huge belly and his head flung back. If only she had something to drop in his wide-open mouth. It's something David would have done. The thought made her want to grin, but she didn't. Once on the wooden platform, she saw him. He stood tall, thin, and scraggly like a scarecrow, wearing denim pants held up by red suspenders. She couldn't see his face at first, hidden by the shadow of his straw hat. He helped the porter with the few trunks they owned, loaded them on a cart, and approached them. Lenore held out her hand, and he shook it. Taking off his hat and smoothing back his hair with long fingers, he bowed his head and said, "Hello, you must be Ellen. Why, you two could pass for sisters." Ellen saw her mother smile but said nothing. Lenore turned to her and scolded, "Where are your manners?" She turned back to him and said, "I have taught her better." "No matter," he shrugged. "The wagon's over this way." Ellen wasn't sure what to say to the man. Could she ask him how old he was? He looked younger than her mother. Was he ill? He had dark circles under his eyes. She wondered what he would say if she asked him what he wanted to marry her mother.